Let's kick it off, guys. Let's kick it off. So, everyone, welcome to today's space hosted by the Financial Summit. So, if you're not aware, Financial Summit is basically a networking event which is held for 5 days in luxury resorts across the world. This year, we are going to be hosting it in Dubai. A beautiful 5-star, 7-star resort. We'll have minimum of 50 to 70 people who are going to be joining us, from traders to hedge fund managers to companies to enthusiasts, other people who are VCs. They all come in there and share their knowledge. It's like learning all the way. So if you haven't booked your place and if you're interested in booking your place, do visit our website, thefinancialsummit.com, and feel free to book your place over there. Tone, if I'm not wrong, we still have some spaces open, right?
Yeah, we do. And also, as you guys see in the pinned tweet, we would love some more exposure for the event, more followers across all social media. And people, as long as people promote posts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, pitch yourself. Let us know why you belong at the Financial Summit, what value you would bring, and you may just get, a $9,000 value for free. We'll give you a room. You'll be a participant. Might even get to speak. So this is a chance for people to sell themselves as to why they belong at the event.
100% Tone. And when we talk about past participants, we have JT from Black Box Trading as well as a listener today. He was there at the Financial Summit last year and he really enjoyed. I think for him, the best part, I would love to know from his own mouth if he's willing to come up and speak. So, JT, you're most welcome to come up and speak if you want to. But he started his own thing after visiting Financial Summit by merging, pairing up with Matthew, if you remember, Tone, and using the alphanumerics indicator and how they are basically transforming and making it such a beautiful bot, and making money while sleeping. That's sort of a vision they have. So everyone gets a chance over there. Financial Summit is not just about people talking about finance or just sitting there and drinking some nice margaritas on the beach. No, it's not just that, guys. You get opportunities. You meet people who are good. You meet people who want to grow, and that's how you grow. So if you haven't signed up, remember, go and sign up now. So, Tone, let's start off. Let's start off the discussion this week. Bitcoin, Tone. I want to start off with Bitcoin. Today, I'm not going to talk about price action. I don't want to ask you where Bitcoin is going to go. What I want to ask you is the changes that have just happened in the Bitcoin accounting side from FASB, and how they have basically now changed their terms or changed their policy, and now they're letting Bitcoin to be part of, that they are going to be adopting Bitcoin, and this might be very good for companies. So do you want to shed some light, or are you aware of the changes? And Michael Saylor today basically came out and talked about it as well. So how do you see this changing going forward?
Yeah, I saw the news. I didn't catch Michael Saylor's take on it. I probably should have. So obviously, this is more bullish than bearish overall, because now companies that purchase Bitcoin can market it to market. So they could, Bitcoin goes up and down, but historically, Bitcoin goes up more than it goes down. Therefore, by default, on a longer term time scale, what we're going to get is companies' balance sheets looking a lot healthier when they're able to mark the Bitcoin that they're holding on their sheets to market. Now, this is especially great for MicroStrategy. Now, having said that, just because it's good long term doesn't mean it's going to always be good short term. So it depends when this comes into effect. My understanding is this is probably not going to come into effect till 2025. So what happens if the bull market has peaked in 2025? And also, a year in Bitcoin is a lifetime for some people, especially when it comes to stress. So if this comes in early 2025 and the market can still rally 100% or 200%, and top in, say, June, that could be really good. But if the market, say, tops in June of 2025, and this regulation comes in, say, July or September of 2025, then the first elements of this new regulation will show up as companies having to, uh, show losses of their Bitcoin positions. So while this is very good longer term, on a short term basis, based on timing and where the next Bitcoin top will be, and we all know there's going to be a top, we just don't know when. It can be 2024, it could be 2025, it could be 2026. So the later the top comes, the better. But if the top precedes this regulation change when it goes into the books, it could make Bitcoin look silly in the short term, but so many other things have done that. And yet here we are, still down 60% in price from the last peak. But we all know Bitcoin can capture that in a nice FOMO in a span of a few months.
100%, 100%. Jürgen, do you have any input on that? Do you want to come and shed your knowledge on that as well?
Yeah, quick shout out to Jürgen. Jürgen has attended 2 financial summit events already, and looking forward to see if he can make another.
Oh, he went on mute.
You just muted Jürgen, so maybe you, yeah, you kind of went backwards there.
Jürgen, you want to say anything? You're on mute, by the way. I guess not. Well, while we're talking about it, Tone, on top of like all this, like, we are saying that, okay, the market might peak and these companies might look a bit more, foolish. Like if the market is peaking and that's when the regulations come in. But if we look from the perspective of MicroStrategy as a whole, right, they are not there for the short run. They are there for the long run. Now, how do you think they are going to use it to their advantage in terms of accounting once it is in? What do you foresee them doing differently from what's happening right now?
I really don't see them doing much differently than what they're doing right now. But and even though, I mean, look, the thing is, the media hates Bitcoin. The media will use any angle they can to demonize Bitcoin. So, like I said, the only problem is if this rule comes into effect after the next Bitcoin peak, then the media will completely use this to demonize Bitcoin and make fun of companies that purchase Bitcoin but now have to market them on Bitcoin's actual current value as the price of Bitcoin drops. Now, in terms of MicroStrategies, what it could mean is if they're doing it as the price of Bitcoin goes up, it may make it easier for that company to, say, borrow additional money at a very low interest rate, because they would show that they are very well capitalized. Because no one wants to take Bitcoin seriously if they're not able to market to market. So MicroStrategies had a bunch of Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin is skyrocketing. But if a company doesn't like Bitcoin and they don't want to make MicroStrategies look good, they're going to say, well, legally, your Bitcoin isn't worth $3 billion. Legally, it's worth whatever you bought it for until you sell it. So they would almost like force MicroStrategy to sell their Bitcoin to show the profit that they have, which would in turn drop the price of Bitcoin. So it's one of these things that people and companies, when they see others doing well and they're not doing as well, they almost want to bring you down in order for them to look better. This would be a lot harder to do in an environment where Bitcoin is rising. But once again, it all goes back to, when is this regulation going to be implemented? And is Bitcoin going to be in a bull market, bear market, or topping? And I have a very pessimistic feeling that this is going to come into effect right around the top of the next bull market.
True that, true that. Also, just to add, guys, if you're not aware, the advantage I feel, Tone, like at least for the time being, if it does come early and not in when the market is dropping, and it might not happen that way, is that companies which are holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet will be able to get tax deductibles, because any unrealized losses that they have will be tax deductible. So they will basically have an advantage over there because they can say, "Oh, we have made this law, so this is becoming. It will reduce the overall tax liability on them." So they might take an advantage if Bitcoin is not peaking. If it is peaking, obviously they will have to give their capital gain on that, whatever it is. But for the time being, as we are in a very much bearish market, as for the top 60% down, in this point of time, if it comes tomorrow, MicroStrategy would be really, really happy. They'll be like, yes, this makes more sense right now for us. But yes, moving on, Tone, I want to ask you about ETFs. Like we have talked about it so much, right? In our spaces, over the news, in your videos, everyone has been talking about ETFs. But now, Ethereum ETF has been filed by ARK Investments. I know you don't rate most of the coins a lot, like apart from Bitcoin, and I'm on the same boat. But how do you think this changes the structure of the ETF for Bitcoin? Does it impact it in any way?
I think that it does. I think this is bad for the Bitcoin ETF. And one of the reasons, as I've stated in the past, one of the reasons why Gary Gensler is hell bent on not allowing a Bitcoin ETF is because he would open the Pandora's box of Dogecoin ETFs and Hex ETFs and OneCoin ETFs, because it's a lot harder to justify why a Bitcoin ETF is allowed, but a scam ETF like an Ethereum ETF is not allowed. And I think this is a huge reason as to why he will not allow a Bitcoin ETF. He already saw this happen with other assets. They allowed the Grayscale to have their trust, and that turned into GBTC. And then here comes shitcoins, right? I mean, Grayscale even had a Ripple account, for God's sakes, which they had to remove because of the Ripple situation. And they have scammier things than even Ripple. And I'm not sure if the CME has an Ethereum futures contract on the CME. I'm not sure if they do or not.
Oh,
But
they do, I think. There is a futures contract for Ethereum.
I'm going to look this up right now. CME Ethereum futures. And again, Gary Gensler, as much as, there is an Ethereum futures contract.
Yeah, I think it was passed a few weeks back, not even long back. It was just a few weeks back when they passed it. I think it was, I can't remember which ETF it came from, but yeah, there was one.
That's okay. Now, the SEC has nothing to do with the CME contracts. Let me not sound too ignorant, right? So this is the CFTC regulation, not SEC regulation. This is a straight up futures contract. But again, as much as we all make fun of and hate Gary Gensler, I think Gary Gensler is a government employee that understands Bitcoin better than any other government employee, which honestly probably includes Cynthia Loomis as well. And Cynthia Loomis is very educated on Bitcoin and crypto, and I think Gary Gensler knows even more. He knows as much as anyone in this space. He knows as much as I do about Bitcoin. He's lived and breathed it for a while. He knows the difference between Bitcoin and shitcoin. And he knows that anything he gives to Bitcoin, he will then have a huge uphill road to deny it in the shitcoin world. So in a way, he's almost protecting Bitcoin by not giving it an ETF, because he knows a shitcoin ETF is right around the corner. We may not like him for this, but I can argue both sides. So I'm not surprised that someone filed an Ethereum ETF, because these companies don't give a shit about Bitcoin. ARK doesn't care about Bitcoin. BlackRock doesn't care about Bitcoin. None of them do. Grayscale and Barry Silbert doesn't care about Bitcoin. These people care about one and only one thing: making money. Making money. They just want to make money. They'll make money in fiat, whatever buys them a better house, whatever puts them in a business class flight. They just want more wealth. And an ETF brings in a nice royalty fee for managing an ETF. Not to mention exposure for their company of having an ETF. And yet they will create the scammiest of ETF as long as the company is being talked about and they're collecting a management fee, and they all become wealthier by doing so. And this is what the free market does. And we need to speak out, and we are all part of the free market. And we need to speak out about how predatory and scammy a lot of these projects are. And as much as people don't like Gary Gensler, I kind of agree with him that a Bitcoin ETF right now is probably still way premature.
Wow, that's a new take because most of the YouTubers you listen to, they're like, "Oh, bring in the ETF, bring in the ETF." But that's how Tone has been throughout his career as a influencer, as a person. It is the truth is the truth, and well said, Tone. So, Tone, I want guys. By the way, this is an open space. It's not for me and Tone to have a chat. We could have done that on a Zoom call, looking at each other as well. That would have been lovely. This is for all of you. If you have any questions, if you want to ask Tone anything, if you want to ask me anything, if you want to ask any of the speakers anything, feel free to raise your hand, and our moderators will get you in and let you speak, give you the stage so that you can express your what you think, and also if you have any questions, you can ask them. Tone, moving on from Ethereum world and the shitcoin world, and moving on from the nice Bitcoin world for a second, I want to go towards the. I know it's politics, but let's not politics. Basically, it's China. What's happening with China, Tone? I mean, the Evergrande basically rallied 70%. Just on a rumor, like a penny stock, right? Just because County Gardens, the second biggest. So, by the way, guys, if you don't know, Evergrande is the biggest property, company in China. Then comes County Garden and a few others, and they defaulted and they dipped. They fell like anything, like a rock. The Chinese market was going down. Then County Garden did not default, and initially they said they were going to default, but then they didn't default. They avoided default. Next thing you know, Evergrande stock soared 70%. Dude, what's going on with this whole China situation? Cutting rates on stock earnings, making reducing the tax on everything, reducing interest rates. What are they trying to achieve right now? What do you think? What is going on there?
Well, China is using every trick in the financial book to try and, uh, you know, reverse their current economic troubles. I think it all stems from the fact of their zero COVID policy, which was a giant mistake that held China back. It lost a lot of industry. That was a lot of manufacturing that was in China. It moved on to Vietnam. It moved on to other nearby countries. And China's demographics are changing. And China is trying to do everything they can in order to prevent an uprising. This is one of the reasons why China has such tyrannical controls, like camera controls and their surveillance system. They're very, very scared that their population of 1.4 billion people could rise up and overthrow the government. That has to be a fear of the Chinese government. And some revolutions lead to significant advantages and making life better, but the majority of revolutions actually lead to bad things happening, right? As well. Like everyone wants to talk about the US Revolution and the French Revolution, but a lot of people forget about the communist Bolshevik Russian Revolution and many other revolutions that took place just in the last century, most of which, America kind of had a hand in. We're not going to talk about Ukraine here. I'm trying not to be political. But I personally don't think things got better in Ukraine after the revolution, especially in hindsight of what's happening right now. Other countries as well. What happened with Iran back in the 50s? So revolutions aren't necessarily lead to good things. And we don't know what would happen if China had a revolution. Would it be better or would it be worse? We have no idea. We can only
So,
look at it in hindsight.
is it fair to say that China is becoming the next Japan? Like the way the economic war is going, there's 45% of the youth is unemployed. Their property index is down 82%. They're basically yuan is at it has broken the lows of 2007. So from every perspective, the biggest manufacturer in the world is at the moment at on their knees, and US might be having a laugh on that.
So once again, let me preface this by saying I know very little about China. China is a topic I try not to discuss too much, but I see no similarity between China and Japan. Japan's problem over the last 30 years is basically because the United States has been telling Japan what to do. Japan has never really been all that independent. They are very independent when it comes to their culture, to their immigration policy. They have full control of that. But when it comes to Japanese finances, back in the 80s and 90s, to a lesser extent right now, but that entire lost decade, which became lost 2 decades, was basically the United States almost controlling Japanese monetary policy. Not directly, but they were the finance ministers of Japan were basically implementing America's monetary economic theory. That's what they studied. That's why they were elected. So in a way, America dictated the policy. China is going to try to do, they're not going to listen to what America thinks China should do. They have their own economists. They have their own view on monetary history. They have their own history of money and their own culture. And China is going to do what China thinks is the right thing. And it may not be what the United States thinks is the right thing. What I read recently was that China is trying to create a whole new department, which sounds counterintuitive, but they're trying to create more confidence in the private sector of China. So it may sound counterintuitive that you create an additional government department that would promote private industry, but that is what China is trying to do. China is trying to be as capitalist as possible, while at the same time, and again, these things sound like a complete contradiction to each other, but they are trying to be as capitalist as possible, while at the same time having full control of their population to prevent an uprising and an overthrow. Because even the United States would be scared if, let's say, 5 million people descended on Washington. I don't think the United States government would be able to do anything about it. Again, I was there on January 6th. I think it was about 1.5 to 2 million people there. And you saw what happened. And nobody was armed. Not a single person there was armed, contrary to what you hear on CNN.
I was about to say that.
Okay. Now, what happens if just 5 million people, and America is 350 million people, what happens if 5 million people decided to go to Washington armed? The US politicians are in trouble. Now, China has 1.4 billion people. And while it's a lot harder to have weapons in China, but still, if you look at the percentage, right? China having 20, 30 million people descend on the leaders is not impossible considering their population is 1.4 billion. They don't need to be armed. We saw that with Tiananmen Square a long time ago. People don't need to be armed. And that's why China is trying to do everything they can in order to have control of their population, while at the same time showing the world and their own citizens that they are a capitalist country and not a communist one. It's probably the greatest challenge in humanity right now, what China is trying to do. They're trying to tyrannically control their population while creating a capitalist environment. Like I said, I'm not an expert on China, but their attempt to do that, create a capitalist financial model while having full control of their population, is a feat that I don't know is possible, but they're sure as hell trying.
So you think, I know you don't, you're not you don't know everything about China, but you know a lot about markets. The measures they are taking, do you think they will work? Do you think doing all these things by cutting the stamp duty on stocks and doing all the things that they are doing, asking people not to short, like literally ordering people not to short the market, do you think this will work? Because in the last few months, we have seen more than $500 billion worth. I think it was billion. Let me double check. I don't want to sound wrong on a space. I need to open that.
Yeah, especially with Chris Chiavaco just joined.
Exactly.
Chris is going to be our guest 1 week from today.
Yeah,
Chris, welcome to speak today as well. And if anyone is in this space that doesn't follow Chris, you definitely should. Chris was one of the people I was following long before I had a YouTube channel, long before I had a Twitter account. We're talking back 2010 days, 20, maybe even before that. I don't remember. So, Chris, thanks for hanging. Thanks for joining us, and looking forward to getting your views on the market next week.
100%, Chris. It will be fun. So, US dollar 900 billion US dollars are worth of foreign investments being pulled out of the Chinese stock market. Tone. And China is still taking a lot of steps to try to bring it back in, or not just the foreign investment, even getting the domestic DIs into the stock market. Do you think it's going to work? All the measures they are taking, do you think they will be able to sustain and basically grow again at the pace they were doing before?
Look, I think any measure that prevents people from shorting markets is a disaster. By not allowing anyone to short a market, you remove the buyer when things fall quite a bit. Like, it's the short seller that spurs the reversal of the asset when it's time for them to take their profit from the short. And anytime there is a halt on shorting, it tends to lead to these giant catastrophic drops, because then there's no buyer after the stock drops to where it belongs, stock or any other asset. So I don't really agree with many of their measures. But again, the free market always wins. And if China realizes to just let the free market do its thing, and they're right, try to let the free market do its thing, while at the same time don't let your government be overthrown by people more tyrannical than your current government, which leads to more tyranny, then everything will be okay. I still think China is gonna reverse its ship, and the demographic problem will eventually resolve itself. And again, I don't know of all the measures that they're taking, but I'm more concerned about the West right now than China. I think the BRICS will have lots of cooperation, and I think China will be fine.
That's good to know. Well, I love China. I've been to China. It's a beautiful place. If you haven't been there, do go. It's lovely. But so, Tone, I don't want to move away from China because there's another thing that happened there. China literally just banned Apple iPhones for all government employees initially. So they banned it initially for only government employees. And then they decided that they want to ban it for all the other agencies as well. So initially it was just government, the first hand government, and then for the all the agencies included. Now, I'm sure you would be aware, but let me put out some numbers there. So at this point of time, Apple's 20% of the market is Chinese market, right? So 20% is basically around $70 billion is basically Apple's Chinese market. Now, if this is being banned, we saw what happened today with Apple. It opened 5% gap down, right? That's a huge move for one of the biggest firms in the index. Now, how do you think, why did China firstly decide to do that? Was it in revenge, or as an action of US banning TikTok and other applications, as well as Huawei as a cell phone manufacturer stating that they have spyware and all that in their phones and applications? Or was it something else, Tone? Or were they worried that US has a spyware?
I am pretty confident it was something else, and it's easy what that something else is. I mean, the United States banned Chinese cell phones a long time ago, and the TikTok thing was. I mean, if China was going to retaliate over that, that would have happened years ago. I think the reason why they're doing it is because they want to create more demand for their own products. Again, because of their current financial situation, they're trying to create more job opportunities for their own people. Now, I don't understand why China allowed American cell phones for the last several years. I mean, America has been very aggressive towards China, and U.S. banned Chinese cell phones because of Chinese spying accusations. I don't see how it's any different on the Chinese side. Like, I don't see. I know Apple is supposed to be a little more privacy focused, even though it's way more closed source than the Google and Androids. But yeah, I'm actually surprised that Chinese government employees were allowed to use Apple to begin with. This is not a big deal. The big deal comes if China decides to ban Apple for all of Chinese citizens inside China. That's a big deal. A few government employees, who cares? The reason why Apple stock dropped so much is not because the Chinese employees are going to be buying Apple cell phones anymore. It's because traders and speculators always think 3 months ahead, 6 months ahead, a year ahead. And the moment China did that, the first thought that comes to mind is, okay, so when are they going to ban Apple phones for all Chinese citizens, not just government employees? And that's why the Apple stock dropped. Now, it's already, I know it rebounded the rest of the day. Let me take a look and see where it is right now at end of day close on Apple. It rebounded nicely throughout the day, right? Because again, the panic sets in because no one knows exactly how big the ban is. And the first thing that comes to mind is, wow, China banned Apple for everyone. And then you find out, no, it's just the government employees. It's not a big deal. The stock price went up during the day, and it's potentially can close the gap. But if China comes back and starts banning it more over the next few weeks, then yeah, Apple stock can certainly drop. Now, this hurts Apple stock a lot more than it hurts China. If anything, this helps China because it creates more localized industry in China.
Well, totally agree. I'm sorry I did not see the chart initially, but the gap is still open. The gap's not closed. Massive gap, obviously. Tone, you would be surprised to know that 40% of Chinese population, the working population, is government employees. So that's a big number. I mean, I can understand it's just a company. Obviously, it hurts US economy because it's one of the biggest companies and all. But for me, I think there might be some sort of trade wars because for China, basically, Chinese exports have reduced by over 49% in the last few years because after COVID and all that. There's zero COVID policy, XYZ, trade wars with America, and whatsoever was going on. I think this is it, there might be something here which we are not aware of. At least I'm not aware of. But yeah, could happen because yeah, that's something that I'm looking at, and I'm going to be trying to research a bit more on this. That what exactly has been going on with the Chinese market as a whole. So that's me on China. So Matt Bull, you joined as a speaker. You sent a request. Do you have any question?
No, I just wanted to comment on what you just said. I think the Chinese and the BRICS and all these other countries that's trying to come together and cripple the United States power. They want to cripple the United States power. They see us as I don't know, corrupt. I suppose I don't know what it is, but they want to cripple the United States. That's what I feel. I feel they want to cripple the United States of America. Yeah, it goes to show with the BRICS and the trading embargoes and so on and so forth. And this is just another play, with Apple being a part of the main three indexes, S&P 500, Dow, and Nasdaq. You know, it's just another way try to cripple us. I mean, cripple the U.S. Pardon.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Well, I do agree, but that's part of the world politics and world economics, I guess. It's always been that way. It will always be that way. One country will try to cripple another country. One will be top, one will be bottom. It's part and parcel. It's just about the plays and how we see the financial markets. That's what's relevant. Because no comments on politics from my side, but that's how it is. So moving on. Have you seen the oil chart? I'm sure you have.
Yes, I have.
8 straight weeks, 7 straight weeks of bullish candles, little pullback. There we go again. And with Mr. Biden deciding to deplete oil reserves more and more. How is he going to bring that oil back? I mean, all the industries work on that, right? I think he has forgotten that, but all the industries are working with oil. They cannot manufacture oil, and they are trying to bring inflation down, and the oil prices are soaring, and they don't have anything in reserves. How do you see they bring inflation? Like, no matter what sort of financial XYZs you use to bring inflation down, if the manufacturing doesn't come down because the initial product is not cheap enough, how do you do that?
That's a great question. However, I do need to throw in a slight correction there. While the Biden administration has been depleting oil reserves, in the last 5 weeks, they've actually purchased a significant amount of oil into the oil reserve. Over the last 5 weeks, they have purchased 3.5 million barrels of oil in the last 5 weeks. And ironically, when we look at the oil chart over the last 5 weeks, oil prices have been rising and they are now breaking a brand new high. Last week was one of the biggest bullish candles we've seen since March. And the current price of oil is the highest it's been since last year. And last week, the number literally just came out. When I did my stream this morning, we didn't have the Strategic Petroleum Reserve number being out yet. And I asked a poll, and I made it specific. Hey, guys, oil went up like crazy last week. Do you think Biden bought over 500 million barrels, sold over 500 million barrels, or didn't touch the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? So that means in between. And I was very surprised to see that 50% of the votes it was like 40% said he bought over 500,000 barrels, 50% of the votes said he sold 500,000 barrels, and the other 20% was like he didn't touch it. And just based on last week's scandal, I'm like, wow, how can you guys be voting that he's selling oil? The price of oil skyrocketed last week. So either they didn't sell any of the reserve or they actually bought a bunch. And they bought a bunch. They bought more oil last week than in any of the prior 3 weeks. So they're replenishing the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and that is helping drive the price higher. Now, that would also drive inflation higher. The only reason that I can give as to why they are doing that, because I know the Biden administration doesn't give a shit about the country. They don't care about Americans. They only care about their global agenda. So the only thing that comes to mind is they don't care if the price of oil skyrockets in 2023, as long as the price of oil goes down in the election year of 2024. So they are purchasing the Strategic Oil Reserve to then dump it onto the market next year on strategic weeks of, election in order to get reelected, claiming how the price of gas is dropping, leading right up to the voting. That's the only explanation I have.
But at least I know now who I owe my profits to that I've made on this trade. So now I didn't know that he was buying, so I was just longing based on support area. But now I know it was him that was buying the red by making the red. Well, that's a good journey, but as I said, the inflation is not going to come down. It's basically increasing the price of manufacturing, which we will see in the next numbers when they come out. And I can't see the Fed reducing the rates until that numbers are basically in a much better position. So, do you think there is, and apart from elections, so that's Biden's agenda to win the election to show that I brought the price down next year. But from the perspective of economy, this is going to impact US in a very, very bad way. I mean, UK is already in a very messy state. US is entering a messy state. And as Matt was talking about, as an agenda that they want to bring US down and XYZ, don't you think that US is doing it themselves right now? Like doing these kind of things over the course of a financial crash is not a good thing?
Yes, I agree. But I think what they're betting on is the fact that owner-occupied rent is a number that is going to come down or flatten out. I think with the reason why they have a little bit of leeway for the price of oil to go up while inflation numbers not go up. So this could potentially be very hard to explain. The CPI number is coming out next week, next Wednesday. I can't wait to see it. Now, one of the arguments as to why the CPI number is going to fall is the fact that owner-occupied rent's going to come down. Now, can we throw a tweet from the Financial Summit about the price to rent versus the price to buy that we sent out like a
100%.
week ago or so? If you throw that up there, you will see how out of control the price to buy has been versus the price to rent. Now, the number that is factored into CPI is actually the price to buy number, the monthly cost of buying the property, because they are using owner-occupied rent. And owner-occupied rent means if the owner was to rent the property and to rent it for the price that he is spending on owning the property, what would that rent be? That is the number in the CPI. Now, this number has gone up a lot, which is what helped drive the CPI higher. But right now, we're at an extreme level. And with the high interest rates to rent a home, the price on renting a home is likely not to rise any further. It may even come down as real estate prices come down a little bit. Interest rate on real estate is going to stay flat because the Fed is not going to raise as quickly. Meanwhile, the actual rent that people pay is going to rise. It's going to keep rising. The rent that people pay has never actually gone up. Has never actually gone down. It has only gone up. So it is very likely that the CPI will not go up. If anything, the CPI could come down. So if the price of oil goes up, that could, negate the lowering of the CPI from the owner-occupied rent while the CPI rises due to the price of oil. Now, just because the CPI comes down because of owner-occupied rent doesn't mean that the actual inflation that a person feels on the street is going to come down. Remember what I just said. Owner-occupied rent might come down, but the actual rent that people are paying is likely to only go up. There was an article in the New York Post the other day, or New York Times, I don't remember, that rent in Manhattan is the highest it's ever been in history. And this was just published several weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago or so. And I don't see that coming down at all. And with the higher gas prices, inflation is that you feel is only going to go up. So it's possible that CPI number comes down a smidge while you're still paying more for shit. And I think the government feels that they have a little bit of leeway here. The Fed has made up their mind. They're not going to raise rates on this FOMC, but they'll probably raise it a quarter on the next FOMC. And if the Fed raise rates a quarter one more time this year, it's going to make no material difference whatsoever at this point. Because at this point, raising a rate by a quarter every 3 months or so has almost no effect. The rate is already almost 6%, so who cares if it's up another quarter? Now, if the rate was 2%, raising it a quarter makes a difference. That's 1/8 of a percent. That's an eighth difference. But raising it a quarter when the rate is over 4%, well, now it's only 1/16 of what the rate is. So it starts to be less damaging to your wallet at that point. Let's put it that way.
That's true. That's true, and I totally agree. And to be honest, I learned a bit as well, like how CPI is going to be impacted. So I hope all of you guys have learned as well. Matt, Bull, you want to say something?
Yeah. Well, you asked. Don't you think that the United States is doing it to its own people, and that's very much so the case. They don't care, like Tone Vays said. They don't care about the economy of the people. They don't care. They're just trying to advance their global agenda. Now, trying to pinpoint what exactly that might be, what might be the global agenda, what might be these people's global agenda? What is the global agenda for the United States? What is it?
Okay, that's a really complicated question. So let me begin with there is one important thing before the global agenda is for them not to get overthrown and for them to get reelected. That is priority one. Now, the current administration is very on board with the global agenda. The majority of Republicans are also on board with the global agenda. The people that are not on board with the global agenda are people like Donald Trump, people like RFK, people like Vivek, who's running for president. I don't think he is a bit of a long shot. But there are people, running for government that are not on board with the global agenda. So what's the global agenda? The global agenda is a the World Economic Forum's Marxist style agenda where there are no borders and it's a one world government with no borders and all the people are as equal as possible. Again, going back to Marxist theory. And I am against living life that way, but that is what I believe the plan is. And most of the Western countries are on board with this agenda. In Europe, the only country that's trying to fight that agenda would be a country like Hungary. You also have Serbia, but Serbia is not part of the Eurozone and the European Union. They're kind of just stuck in the middle of it. But most other presidents and most other people in government are on board with this agenda, the agenda of, they're the ones that can prevent climate change. That's, in line with that type of agenda.
Okay, that's good. I hope it answered your question.
Yeah, I kind of. They want everybody to be equal, and they don't want to be overthrown. But the system that's in power right now is it's not, it's not equal. It's not. They want to maintain their system of power, and they want things to continue the way they are. If they wanted the people to be equal, everybody be equal, then why keep up the current system in which is functioning? Why do that?
Well, you can't bring this overnight, right? I mean, this takes a lot of brainwashing through 20, 30 years of liberal education and the media. So it takes a while. It really does take a while to get a hold of. And it's troublesome, right? It's absolutely troublesome. I mean, if you look at the political views of teachers, they are 95 to 98% liberal, full-on Democrat. That's not, diversity, right? That is one side that is teaching everyone in schools. And after 20, 30 years, it has its effect. It takes time. And they have a long view. They have a long view of this vision. And they're trying.
Cool. So, and I want to end today's space on a note which is good for crypto, obviously. Something that is changing with some countries, being a bit reluctant to adopt crypto and to basically say, yes, this is the new norm and everything. At the G20, the chair, India is the chair this year, soon to be known as Bharat. The finance minister basically said in very clear words that we want to table key issues related to regulating or understanding that there should be a framework for handling issues such as crypto assets. And they want to have active discussions. And they've said that we are having active discussions with other G20 members on how to regulate these. Do you think it's a very good way in which such a big summit, such a massive summit with a country which is now starting to build, in a way that, kind of becoming a very, very important power in the world, they are trying to initiate such talks?
I don't have an opinion on this because I don't know which direction it would lead. This could be good, this could be bad. I think every country other than El Salvador is generally against Bitcoin. The only hope we have is that the more uh, America is against Bitcoin, the more Russia is going to be for it. The more Russia is for Bitcoin, the more America will likely be against it, right? Or the other way around, if Russia starts being very aggressive and anti-Bitcoin, it may change the minds of American politicians saying, hey, if Russia hates Bitcoin, maybe we shouldn't hate it as much. But I don't think it's going to go in that direction. Bitcoin could be the one thing where every government in the world lines up against and tries to ban all at the same time. Would it succeed? Eventually, no. Would it cause problems in the intermediate to short term? Absolutely. The U.S. government didn't succeed in banning marijuana and weed, and they failed. It is now becoming legal everywhere. But in that failure, for 40, 50 years, people went to prison for a long time for smoking a joint. So yes, we can claim that the government can't ban a weed that is growing out of the ground, but at the same time, they can make your life a living hell for your entire life for the next 30, 40 years. So I don't know which direction this is going to go. India has taken very aggressive and tyrannical views against Bitcoin. And India has also, in some cases, realized it's something that they can't stop and prevent. I think overall, India has. I had friends in India. Well, maybe not friends, but friends of friends, but people that I've known that got arrested in India for running Bitcoin companies that they assumed were actually legal and legit. So I think India has done a lot of bad in their views towards Bitcoin. So I'm not expecting much good to come out of these talks by the G20 on Bitcoin, because it goes against every country's core principle of controlling the money. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm hoping that these countries have enough problems between each other to deal with, and this is not a topic of conversation. I'd rather have these countries ignore this topic. But also, I think this G20 meeting is the least relevant G20 meetings of ever, because Russia and China will not be there. Xi will not be there. Putin will not be there. Other representatives from their countries will be there. I know it reflects very badly on India by not having two key leaders, especially from the BRICS nations, not at the G20 event, but it makes total sense why they're both not going to be there. No one wants to deal with Biden. No one wants to be in a room with Biden, especially not Xi and especially not Putin. So they're not going to attend this G20, and it's possible they're never going to attend another G20. And if India wasn't hosting it, India is way more diplomatic. They would probably be there. But there's going to come a time where half the countries in the G20 just will not be there. Because especially if Biden gets reelected, they're not going because no one wants to talk to him.
Oh, well, I've never talked to him and don't intend to as well. So that's good to know. But yeah, it's great to get your views, because I didn't see this picture from the point of view that you showed, Tone, just now. Because I was very, very excited. I was really excited that, G20, we are talking about Bitcoin, things are going to go well. But you showed me another side of it, and that's good to see. That's what experience shows you, like other side of things, which we can't see yet. But thank you so much, Tone. Thank you for joining. Thanks, Mad Bull, for asking the questions that you did. And guys, we'll have another space on. I think it will be scheduled on Sunday this week, and it will be more. It will be a longer one. It will be a 2-hour space. We'll have much more topics. So I would really love if you guys come back and join us. Again, thanks, Tone. Thanks for coming, and talk to you on Sunday.
Thanks, man. Give me like 2 minutes before you end the space. I do want to do a price update real quick. And the most important things right now is that the daily MRI is coming up on an MRI buy just in a few hours. Let me make sure that the MRI buy is still going to come in. Oh, MRI buy may not come in. We just rallied.
Did we?
Yeah.
Let me see the chart. Oh, yeah. Oh, nice.
Right.
What happened?
Bitcoin has just rallied about $400-500.
Yeah, a lot of volume came in.
Yeah. So this rally in Bitcoin will prevent the MRI buy showing up tomorrow. Bitcoin would have to make new lows. But either way, I was still anticipating a low for Bitcoin to come in about a week and a half because the weekly
Tone,
MRI
your voice is not really audible.
Okay, let's try again. Unmuted. Better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, great. So the
No,
weekly...
Tone, it's really not audible.
Oh, hold on. Let me leave and come back real quick.
Yeah, sure. Until then, let me throw a little bit of TA over here. So, well, we are just below MA20 getting rejected from there. As of now, we have 2.5 hours, 3 hours to close on top of it. Yeah, much better, Tone. Yeah, the stage is yours. Yeah.
Buy on a daily. But I was not anticipating this MRI buy on a daily to reverse the market because we've been consolidating for a month. What I am anticipating is an MRI buy next week. Next week's candle is a weekly MRI candle, which again could be negated if the price continues to rally. And I believe right now we right now we are still on an MRI warning candle, and very likely next week we're going to have an MRI buy. So what I was anticipating was the next daily MRI buy, which would come in about 10 days, that would follow the weekly MRI buy, which is happening next week. So while I am looking for the markets to reverse, I'm looking for the markets to reverse from like the $24,000 area. So I still remain short-term bearish, but intermediate and long-term bullish. But it's interesting that the price of Bitcoin just rallied a bit.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the chart, Tone, I mean, I see a lot of sell-side liquidity lying like just below. So we took out the 28, 24, 823. So that's fine. But we haven't yet tested the sell-side liquidity at 19,592. So I'm kind of like, if we break below 24, 823, I don't see us bouncing before that. Like, that's me. Like, I just don't see us I think it's just going to be a flash crash to 19,500-ish area and bounce from there if we do not go above the current structure. The current structure is what's holding us back, I think.
All right, and on that note, we can slowly wrap up. We will try to bring you a longer space this weekend with Joe Colasari, and hopefully Chris Chiavaco would join us a week from today. And he stepped in here for 5 minutes. Hopefully he said, "Oh God, no, I'm not going to join these people," because it is someone I really respect and his market opinion.
Cool. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Tone, talk to you soon.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.